oath. Qushayri, author of a famous work designed to close the breach between Sufism and Islam, who died in 1074 of the Common Era, and Hujwiri discussed the question whether a saint can be conscious of his saintship, and answered it in the affirmative. Their opponents argue that consciousness of saintship involves assurance of salvation, which is impossible, since no one can know with certainty that he shall be among the saved on the day of judgment. In reply, it was urged that God may miraculously assure the saint of his predestined salvation, while maintaining him in a state of spiritual soundness and preserving him from disobedience. The saint is not immaculate as the prophets are, but the divine protection which he enjoys is a guarantee that he will not persevere in evil courses, though he may temporarily be led astray. According to the view generally held, saintship depends on faith, not on conduct, so that no sin except infidelity, infidelity is not really the right word, but something that's straight up disbelief, or misbelief, you could say, can cause it to be forfeited. This perilous theory, which opens the door to antinomianism, was mitigated by the emphasis laid on fulfillment of religious law. The following anecdote of Bayezid al-Bastami shows the official attitude of all the leading Sufis who are cited as authorities in the Muslim textbooks. I was told, he said, that a saint of God was living in such a town, and I set out to visit him. When I entered the mosque, he came forth from his chamber and spat on the floor. I turned back without saluting him, saying to myself, a saint must keep the religious law in order that God may keep him in his spiritual state. Had this man been a saint, his respect for the law would have prevented him from spitting on the floor, or God would have saved him from marring the grace vouchsafed to him. Many walis, however, regard the law as a curb that is indeed necessary so long as one remains in the disciplinary stage, but it may be discarded by the saint. Or you could say that the saint goes beyond just following the law, or he follows the law in the new circumstance. He becomes a living word, which you can't discard the word if you're a living word. But anyways, such a person, they declare, stands on a higher plane than ordinary men, and is not to be condemned for actions which outwardly seem irreligious. While the older Sufis insist that a wali who breaks the law is thereby shown to be an impostor, the popular belief in the saints and the rapid growth of saint worship tended to aggrandize the wali at the expense of the law and to foster conviction that a divinely gifted man can do no wrong, or at least that his actions must not be judged by appearances. The classical instance of this just divinum vested in the friends of God is the story of Moses and Khidr, which was related in Al-Quran, Surah 18, ayat 64 to 80. Khidr or Khizr, the Quran doesn't mention it by name, is a mysterious sage endowed with immortality who is said to enter into conversation with wandering Sufis and impart to them his God-given knowledge. Moses desired to accompany him on a journey that he might profit by his teaching. And Khidr consented, only stipulating that Moses should ask no questions of him. So they both went on till they embarked in a boat, and he, Khidr, staved it in. What, cried Moses, hast thou staved it in that thou mayest drown its crew? Verily a strange thing hast thou done. He said, and I tell thee that thou couldst have no way, have patience with me. Then they went on till they met a youth, and he slew them. Said Moses, hast thou slain him who is free from guilt of blood? Surely now thou hast wrought an unheard of thing, After Moses had broken his promise of silence for the third time, Kither resolved to leave him. But first he said, I will tell thee of the meaning of that which thou couldst not have patience. As to the boat, it belonged to poor men, toilers on the sea, and I was minded to damage it, for in their rear was a king who seized on every boat by force, and as to the youth, his parents were believers, and I feared lest he should trouble them by error and unbelief. The Sufis are fond of quoting this unimpeachable testimony that the Wali is above human criticism, and that his hand, as Jalaluddin asserts, is even as the hand of God. Most Muslims admit the claim to be valid insofar as they shrink from applying conventional standards of morality to holy men. I have explained its metaphysical justification in an earlier chapter. A miracle performed by a saint is termed karamat, i.e., a favor which God bestows upon him, whereas a miracle performed by a prophet is called mu'jizat, i.e., an act which cannot be imitated by anyone. The distinction originated in controversy and was used to answer those who held the miraculous powers of the saints to be a grave encroachment on the prerogative of the prophet. Sufi apologists, while confessing that both kinds of miracle are substantially the same, take pains to differentiate the characteristics of each. They declare, moreover, that the saints are the prophet's witnesses, and that all their miracles, like a drop trickling from a full skin of honey, are in reality derived from him. This is the orthodox view and is supported by those Muslim mystics who acknowledge the law as well as the truth, though in some cases it may have amounted to little more than a pious opinion. We have often noticed the difficulty in which the Sufis find themselves when they try to make a logical compromise with Islam. But the word logic is very misleading in this connection. The beginning of wisdom for European students of Oriental religion lies in the discovery that incongruous beliefs, I mean, of course, beliefs which our minds cannot harmonize, dwell peacefully together in the Oriental brain, that their owner is quite unconscious of their incongruity, and that, as a rule, he is absolutely sincere. Contradictions which seem glaring to us do not trouble him at all. The thaumaturgic element in ancient Sufism was not so important as it afterwards became in the fully developed saint worship associated with the dervish orders. A saint would be nonetheless a saint, says Kushairi, if no miracles were wrought by him in this world. In early Muslim Vita Sanctorum, it is not uncommon to meet with sayings to the effect that the miraculous powers are comparatively a small account. It was finally said by Sahal ibn Abdullah that the greatest miracle is the substitution of a good quality for a bad one, and the Kitab al-Luma gives many examples of holy men who disliked miracles and regarded them as a temptation. During my novitiate, said Bayezid, God used to bring before me wonders and miracles, but I paid no heed to them, and when he saw that I did so, he gave me the means of attaining knowledge of himself. Junaid observed that reliance on miracles is one of the veils which hinder the elect from penetrating to the inmost shrine of truth. This was too high doctrine for the great mass of Muslimin, and in the end the vulgar idea of saintship triumphed over the mystical and theosophical conception. All such warnings and scruples were swept aside by the same irresistible instinct which rendered vain the solemn asseverations of Muhammad that there was nothing supernatural about him, and which transformed the human prophet of history into an omnipotent hierophant and magician. The popular demand for miracles far exceeded the supply, but where the Wallies failed, a vivid and credulous imagination came to the rescue and represented them not as they were, but as they ought to be. Year by year, the legend of saints grew more glorious and wonderful as it continued to draw fresh tribute from the unfathomable ocean of Oriental romance. The pretensions made by the Wallies or on their behalf steadily increased, and the stories told of them were ever becoming more fantastic and extravagant. I will devote the remainder of this chapter to a sketch of the Wally as he appears in the vast medieval literature on the subject.